The DEI committee meeting for February 11th, 2026. Welcome to all members that are in attendance. And we will begin with the action items. We have approval of the DEI minutes from November of 2025 and the DEI committee from January 14th. We recommend it for approval. Mr. Piscatelli, a second. Nina Kaplan. All right. All those in favor? Fantastic. All yeses. Thank you very much. All right. Number 3, information items, DEI in action. And I assume we're going to turn it over to Leah for the DEI in action, unless I'm wrong.
Yes.
All
No,
right.
thank you so much. So lots been going on this past month in the elementary schools. Derek and I have been able to visit many of the equity team meetings at Altamont. They are gearing up for their next assembly to continue the message of kindness in their school. Pine Bush Elementary recently had their first grade traditions presentations, which went really well, and they're still doing some work with their book study. We're going to keep on talking, as is Guilderland Elementary. Guilderland Elementary recently had their 5th grade wax museum, and those students did a really nice job learning about a lot of different people, like present day and also history. We at Westmere Elementary, they had their cultural chat. It focused on China, and they had presenters from the president of the Chinese Community Center. They had a Guilderland resident with experience teaching in China and USA, and they also had a Westmere student's parent as part of a panel to talk about schools. And today, Linwood had a curriculum meeting, and we were able to share out some information about our collaboration with Educate to Empower, where Guilderland High School students will be trained with anti-bias training and heading to Linwood Elementary to share their learning. So a lot of great things happening in elementary schools. In FMS, Derek and I, we were able to go to see the Lunar New Year assembly, which was really wonderful. Recently, earlier in February, was World Read Aloud Day. It's always one of my favorite days because students get to be virtually visited by a lot of different diverse authors from all across the country. One of the classes welcomed, actually 2 classes welcomed Allie Russell, who is a middle grade horror author of the Book of Outcasts Wednesday, so like the series Wednesday. And Down Came the Spider. Stan Yan, who is he is a writer and illustrator and author of the graphic novel The Many Misfortunes of Eugenia Wang. Darcy Marks, who is a middle grade, another horror fiction author of Grounded for All Eternity. She's also a founder of the Safety Team, a nonprofit organization focusing on the empowerment and safety of women. And then Catherine Hulick, who is an author of several educational books for kids, such as Robotics and Medicine, What is Artificial Intelligence, Citizen Science, How Anyone Could Contribute to Scientific Discovery, and as well as middle grade books like Welcome to the Future. She actually joined Jody's math class, which was really awesome to have, a writer in a math class too. And that was really neat. And the high school, myself and Mr. Maybeer, we actually were able to read section of Elie Wiesel's Night during a day into night, where students got to hear the full book. And as they were doing that, in between readings, students were circulating to different stations and learning information about that time in history. And in addition, and I'm sure Mr. Westbrook can talk more about things happening from Student Voice, but the Student Voice Committee at the high school continued their random acts of connection and kindness by collaborating with the communications team, and they recorded some content for their GHS Mic'd Up series, and we're really excited that this video, the first of the series, the video is going to be actually dropping on Friday, so students are going to be able to see that during homeroom, and then it'll be up on our social media, the Guilderland social media. Let's see, and I'm sure Derek and we'll be able to, and I think Jody's not here because she's at the FMS concert tonight. But the 2 of them, they took students to the STOP conference. So I'm sure Derek will tell you a little bit more about that. As a whole district, the GTAs from believe all the different buildings participated in Lasagna Love. Lasagna Love is a volunteer-driven nonprofit, feeds families, spreads kindness, strengthens communities by delivering homemade meals to neighbors who could just use a little extra care. And today, actually, students from Jody's math class, they made some lasagnas, and teachers deliver those as well. Outside of school, through BOCES, Derek and I, we attended the equity officers meeting last month, and much of the focus was on the Crosswalk for Integration, the New York State Standards and Culturally Responsive Sustaining Education Framework. And we're really looking forward to, at the end of this month, the Student Voice is going to be hosting their second annual breakfast event. So we're really happy about that. So thanks.
Thank you, Leah. Yes, Tony, do you have a question?
No.
Okay.
No, it's actually me, Dan.
Well, I know he started to talk first. That's why I was just checking with him before, and then you raised your hand. So, Mr. Piscatelli.
I just want to put two things on the calendar for our DEI committee members, because as much as they're in April, it's going to creep up on us pretty fast. April 2nd, we have the cultural fair, the high school cultural fair. So that will be going on. And then a new thing we're doing this year, it's April 24th. We're actually hosting Bethlehem High School, and we're doing a during the school day unified basketball game. So we're going to do shortened classes that day, and all the students in the building are going to come down and watch and cheer for the unified athletes from both schools for a basketball game, which we went to Bethlehem last year, and we are hosting it this year. So I just wanted everyone to know that.
All right. Thank you, Mike. Derek, did you have any comments on anything Leah had said? Or are there things that are going to come up later in your...
Only the STOP conference went great. We did have students from the junior high school and the high school going together. The great, part of that is that the interaction between the students was so awesome. They were very mentoring to the junior high students, and it was a good way to cultivate a sort of a pipeline of leadership, So it was nice to watch the students interact and represent us at that conference. They also had the Museum of Tolerance there. They had a bus, which they had retrofitted into a presentation, almost like a party bus, because there's all these light show and stuff. But it literally had a series of different programs on the Holocaust remembrance, civil rights, and different things. And it travels throughout the United States. And we were looking into maybe seeing how we can make that become part of some of our events in the future. But it was a really good presentation. We all got a chance to get the tour of the bus and hear their presentation.
Fantastic. All right. Thank you, Derek. Next item on the agenda is the subcommittees. Share out updates on the recent work and communications and community engagement. You want to take that? Mike?
Yeah, I can speak a little bit to it. Communications and community engagement, we spent some time looking at the DEI, what DEI document that is, what is DEI and what is it not. So we kind of spent some time looking at the document and wordsmithing that a little bit, and then adding specific examples of where those principles have been put into action in our school district. So we kind of filled in that document, and then at the next expanded leadership meeting, we shared that document with all the 7 buildings, and we asked them to review it and add their own examples to it. And our plan is at the next subcommittee meeting is to kind of review some of the things that people added to the document and get it in a final form, or get it to our communications department to make it look a little fancier and presentable, and then get it out to the district. So.
Very cool. All right. Thank you, Mike. I think that pretty much captures it. I'm on the same committee. So Thank you for that update. Research committee. Subcommittee, I guess, sorry.
Yes, the research committee met on the same night, and we went over the NYSED's culturally responsive and sustaining education framework, and we specifically discussed some of the major concepts like what is culture and what its relationship is to education, and used some of their documents to highlight some of the things that we felt were important. And based on that foundation, we discussed what we see as a district as being successful and where we're experiencing challenges with regard to the framework. And we discussed how we can support our school administrators, staff, teachers, students, and families. There were a number of questions that came up. We wanted to be able to leverage each feedback from all of the stakeholders. And we discussed getting feedback from teachers in particular about some of their attitudes or support that they may need. The committee was developing a list of questions that they thought would be important feedback to share that they could follow up on as a research committee. And we drafted, some issues of a short blurb into why that would be important. So we're going to be going over those survey questions and coming up with a way to figure out how the research committee can utilize those or leverage those to get some feedback and support, give teachers more support in that particular area. There's some members here, so if they wanted to elucidate, they can.
Anyone have any other comments? Tony?
I should be careful about volunteering for anything. I should know better, but in my past life, I did a lot of survey research, designing surveys, administering, analyzing the results, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So if you want somebody to just kind of review the work, comment on it, be helpful in some way in that, I'd be happy to try it.
Well, definitely appreciate that feedback. I will make sure you're in the loop for the document that we're creating, and I'll share it with you so you can get feedback or be a commenter on that page.
Okay, great.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, not seeing any other comment. We'll move on to the next group, Student Voices, FMS and GHS. I know we don't have an FMS person here, but commentary on the work that they're doing.
Well, those students the last thing they did was going to the STOP conference, and we had some representation from them there. They had just wrapped up a holiday survey, and they had discussed results with the students, and they were doing some follow-up into what students would like to learn about the holidays they didn't know, and they were going to share information with those students with regard to those holidays. So they were working on that. In the high school, we have a lot of things going on, as Leah had mentioned before. One of our RAC initiative, which was Random Acts of Connection and Kindness, was the video that will be coming out. It was finished today, and if you would like, I could share it with everybody. You can get a little preview, sneak preview of it. I think it really shows what our students are trying to accomplish in the school as a committee, and what we're trying to do. So let me share my screen, and hopefully I'll make this happen. Ooh, that's weird. Okay.
Let's put it on our end if it plays.
Okay.
My friends that make school so much more exciting every day.
The reason I come to school every day is because I love those guys.
Something that makes me want to come to school every day is this guy right here. This guy's my best friend.
I come to school to hang out with my friends each day, like these guys.
My mom.
My friends. The opportunity.
Dress rehearsal with my friends for the musical.
Seeing my teachers makes me want to come to school every day, and I love seeing my friends.
Oh, wonderful.
Come to school every day because I like my teachers.
Mrs. Rudolph's English class and Mr. Rudolph's calc class.
Mr. Calvin.
Mr. Heidinger.
I come to school for the vending machines.
Because Miss Holmes gives me snacks and it makes me happy.
Seeing my coaches and talking to them about my day and then helping me get through the day.
I come here because I love to wrestle.
Track.
It's just one word. BOCES.
Because of my friends and more so BOCES.
What makes me want to come to school every day is the kind community of Guilderland. All the teachers are so kind and all of my friends make me laugh all the time, so that's why I want to come to school every day.
There you have it. A picture is definitely worth 1,000 words in that respect. Sorry, got a little glitchy, but it will be cleared up. But the students really wanted to tap into what makes a student want to get out of bed and come to school, and just say these are the reasons that we're connected, and this is why we are a united, Guilderland community. They wanted to encourage that. So that was a lot of fun to watch them put it together and work with our communications department and work with our theater department and Andy McCack and some of the others. And we're looking forward to see what the response will be.
Fantastic. All right. Thank you. Next item up on our agenda is for information, our updates. One, for the federal government withdraws a lawsuit on DEI. Derek, did you want to comment on that, or just in general talk about the fact that the federal government had instituted a lawsuit, dealing a blow to DEI and DEI initiatives, and they have since withdrawn that lawsuit. So,
yes, that's basically all I really wanted to outline, is that the lawsuit has gone away and it's given some breathing room to folks to move forward. And looks like some of the storm is passing. We'll see how things continue to develop, but that was good news on that front, that the cloud hanging over DEI programs and funding is really no longer there for now.
All right. And number two, New York State laws to strengthen DEI at the state level.
Yes, there's been a lot of activity in the past month and in this legislative session. So I just want to give you an idea of what's on tap, I guess, at the here in Albany and from the government. In January, Governor Hochul announced legislation dubbed the Local Cops Local Crime Act to restrict ICE access to sensitive locations, including schools, and to prohibit entry without a judicial warrant. The proposal seeks to protect immigrant communities by banning local law enforcement from collaborating with federal immigration agents and preventing state resources from assisting in immigration raids. So that is up and out, and I know some guidance has come out from the AG's office, the Attorney General's office, along with the Governor's office, while that is being considered. There are some bills in the Assembly and also in the Senate that will be impacting DEI. One bill will require school districts to have DEI officers develop methods to diversify the personnel at their school district and recommend changes to district policies and practices to reduce racial disparities in hiring school employees, particularly teachers. It requires boards of education to annually report information regarding such policies and practice to the Department of Education, and would require the Department of Education to annually report such information to the legislature. That bill is in the Assembly. There's another bill in the Senate that is comparable, that is running through. So these are things that are being debated and discussed at this moment. There's another bill in the Senate that would direct the Commissioner of Education to convene a statewide and regional conventions to bring together underrepresented educators annually to discuss experiences, best practices, and afford for networking, mentoring opportunities, and support. I think this comes from some of the issues where we want more representation, especially in the teaching fields, and they're worried about isolation of folks into across the state, that they are need support. So this was another bill that's on the way. Another important bill that's also in the Senate and the Assembly is about instruction in public schools, requiring it to be aligned with the culturally responsive and sustaining education framework, and would require the Commissioner of Education to update learning standards on an ongoing basis to provide technical assistance and resources to aid public schools in providing such instruction. And this is, again, just, I think, strengthening SED's approach about Portrait of a Graduate and the direction that they're moving. So the Senate and the Assembly are definitely wanting to be involved with that and are standing behind SED in that respect. And the last bill is a bill that provides publicly funded libraries and say that they may not ban books because of partisan or doctrinal disapproval. It directs school districts to adopt the American Library Association Bill of Rights. So here's another instance where folks are looking to provide support to public libraries and libraries and schools to protect against book banning and those types of activities, and wanting folks to be involved in making sure that there's diversity of thought out there in the world. But those are some of the things that are on tap at the Assembly and in the Senate that will be demonstrating how the state is doubling down on DEI and how many of our political and educators at that level are really trying to work to figure out what's the best path to support our students and support all students.
Derek,
Yes, Tony.
do you have any notes in your descriptions there with how our local legislators fit in with that? Are they, like Senator Fahey and Assemblywoman Romero? Are they sponsors for these bills? Are they engaged with it?
They were not sponsors of any of the bills that I had mentioned, but all those bills are still in committee and will be coming to the floor at some point during this legislative session. So their voting record, I guess, will be available around the time that these are heard.
Okay. I mean, I would just expect them to be supportive of most of those things, but they also have a lot of other things on their agenda, certainly.
Definitely.
I would agree with that. Thank you. Any other question or comments? All right. Thank you. See none. We'll move on to item number 4, our learning component. And hopefully we've all reviewed the 4 videos that we had. They were short, and then we can discuss the questions. Video number 1, what is culturally responsive teaching? And the question, what is the overall goal of these 3 pedagogies: culturally relevant, culturally responsive, and culturally sustaining teaching?
Definitely.
I'll turn it over to you, Derek.
All right. I will share that video, and then we can have a short discussion about it. As I make sure I have the right one. Hopefully it plays better than the other.
For decades, researchers have explored how teachers can think of students' cultural identities and lived experiences as a tool for academic success. And these teaching methods, which experts broadly refer to as asset-based pedagogies, can get really complex. 3 terms we'll focus on to better understand this area of research are culturally relevant pedagogy, culturally responsive teaching, and the newer culturally sustaining pedagogy. To break it all down, we can think of these terms like we think of a tree. There are roots, a trunk, and branches and leaves. And when these types of teaching come together, they contribute to the shared goal of making schools a place that values students' cultures in a way that ultimately empowers all learners, but particularly students of color. For instance, take the roots. Teddy Beam Conroy, associate teaching professor at the University of Washington, said the roots can represent the rich wealth of knowledge of students' communities, which has been overlooked in mainstream education. A different approach to teaching that values that knowledge is known as culturally relevant pedagogy. It was introduced in the 1990s by Gloria Ladson-Billings after she researched how teachers effectively taught African American students. She laid out culturally relevant pedagogy's 3 main components: prioritizing students' intellectual growth, creating an environment where students affirm and appreciate their culture of origin while also developing fluency in other cultures, and teaching students how to identify, analyze, and solve real-world problems, especially those around societal inequities. If culturally relevant pedagogy is the trunk of the tree, then culturally sustaining pedagogy and culturally responsive teaching are its branches, and each of their various components the leaves. In the year 2000, Geneva Gay coined the term culturally responsive teaching, which utilizes students' different cultural characteristics, experiences, and perspectives as tools for better classroom instruction. Things like understanding different groups' cultural values and traditions, sharing multiple perspectives with context, validating cultural identity, and modifying the classroom to fit different communication styles. These are all components of culturally responsive teaching. 12 years later, Django Paris coined the term culturally sustaining pedagogy, another branch on the tree and another framework that builds on Ladson Billings' original research. Culturally sustaining pedagogy supports teaching in a way that celebrates multiculturalism and decenters whiteness in the classroom. So cultural differences aren't only respected and acknowledged, they're nurtured. All of these terms are really just trying to explain the bigger picture of asset-based pedagogies, or the overall tree, if you will. And even though each term has its own components, defined by different researchers at different times, they all share the same goal of making school a place where the knowledge of marginalized communities informs instruction. This type of teaching empowers all students to become lifelong critical thinkers. For continuing coverage on culturally responsive teaching and other teacher topics, go to our Education Week teacher page at edweek.org/teacher-learning.
Imagine.
Sorry about that. Okay. Our initial question is, what is the overall goal of these three pedagogies? As you see pulling them together.
I mean, overall for me, it's pulling it together in a way that addresses the actual students you have in the class and their life experiences, and using those as growth opportunities and topics to help the students relate to the content that you're doing, and making sure that you're addressing all students and all cultures that are present within your classroom to help them all succeed. That's what I took from it.
I think that's a pretty good nutshell. Anybody else want to add to that?
Yeah, let me be a little Debbie Downer here. I was a chemistry teacher, chemistry and science. A lot of what I just saw in that video was only relevant to me as a chemistry teacher in terms of how to understand different ways, different cultures would approach the study of science. In other words, not a kid from any culture is going to approach the study of science the same way. Right. That would be very relevant to me. What are those differences? How do people from highly competitive cultures, or low literacy cultures, or cultures of highly dogmatic and ideologically biased against science traditions, of things like that. But I didn't, how would those concerns fit into that video? I was trying to make that connection as I was listening to it, and maybe because it was just, a lot of information coming very rapidly, but I didn't make a connection. How do cultural differences, which are there, we're going to deal with them. How are they going to affect the particular teaching problems that a chemistry teacher faces, or a history teacher faces, or an economics teacher faces, or whatever? It seems to me those are really tough, and I didn't hear much about that, or maybe it was at a level of abstraction that I missed.
I'm not sure I'm going to answer your question directly, but I will say that focusing on the lived experiences of the students in the classroom gives you a platform to delve into topics that can make the students connect with various topics. Like in our math class, there was a social justice unit that was done in our middle school where the students did a community garden, and they used their math skills to design a community garden and solve a real world problem, in the class that the students can connect with. It was dealing with urban poverty and food scarcity and those types of things that exist in our community. So by drawing on the lived experiences sometimes of the people there, you can find projects that are close to what people are dealing with, and use those as text for helping them engage in the discipline or the study of science or math or what have you in the classroom. So I think that was more the take, other than the people looking for a worldview difference of how people may approach science in China versus America, or the medical sciences. We have acupuncture and acupressure. We're not going into that level of specificity or asking people to identify chi versus, some other type of energy, but it's really just focusing basically on the lived experience of students and using that as a window into their world to get them to connect with the material.
Okay, that makes sense.
Nina.
Yeah, I think that that the question, to your point, Tony. I think that in research we touched on this a little bit too, which is the way to make it, the way to actually fully execute the new mandate in terms of culture responsive teaching, and I think that is something that those specifics are going to be the question that the state, as far as I know at this point, is leaving that pretty undefined, and I'm guessing that will change as we get towards 2029. But your question is probably the reason why they haven't specified it yet. I think there's a lot of unknown. So I think it's going to vary, but hopefully there'll be some kind of more specifics, or it's going to be pretty much up to each district really at that point to determine that. And I think the state deliberately created it that way so that, and I guess that makes sense because each district has their own demographics really generally, and to curtail it to the population makes sense and the community makes sense. But that's the big question. That's the big question.
Mm-hmm.
I'm glad I'm not teaching and I don't have to face that anymore.
Well, the demographics of our communities have been changing and shifting, and one thing that is the challenge is making sure that all the students that are in our school are connected to the curriculum and are benefiting from it, and that's a new challenge. And Goodland has a unique challenge because I think we have a strong ELL population. We have a very inclusive neurodivergent population in the community. So I think they're already taking on that challenge within the school, and I think there is evidence of our teachers using some pretty interesting strategies to get students involved and connected in the classroom. And sometimes we don't need to go far to see examples of this. Just let the teachers do what they do, and a lot of times they start demonstrating some of those abilities right in front of our face. And some of the things, some of the lesson plans that Leah has come up with teachers in alignment with teachers have been pretty amazing to view in the classroom. So yeah, sometimes it's just being able to see what our teachers, when given space and time to collaborate, can come up with.
Nina. Thank you, Derek.
Yeah, I was just going to quickly add, similar to that, Derek, that I think it just comes down to what we do, right? Try to make kids have a sense of belonging. And I think, as one of the videos pointed out, that when this very relevant and important, significant piece of teaching that unfortunately marginalized groups are left out of that in history. So, you know, when we start to look at the big picture, that was something that was kind of that opened a lot of people's minds, I guess, when that began to become in the field of education. So now that the state just pretty much bringing it in as a component, right, making it official. But when it was brought up, it wasn't necessarily something that was considered, unfortunately. But it really comes down to just being considerate and making people feel welcome. But I think it also speaks to even students being able to identify with somebody that they can relate to in the faculty and other areas like that are similar to who they are, and not feeling like different than others, right? And that's really what we try to do in education. This is basically just a reminder of it, I think.
I think the next video may be helpful in distinguishing what culturally responsive education is as opposed to multicultural education and social justice education. And I think those distinctions were pretty important. I'm a fan of Zaretta Hammond, so I definitely picked this with intention. But I thought that distinction would offer some clarity and also give some perspective to folks. So here's the next video. Make sure I'm picking the right one. Uh-oh. This one, I believe it's... Okay, I hope this is the right one.
Instead, we need to be thinking about how is equity at the core? How are we maintaining that lens and sharpening it so that we are continually helping the student who is furthest away from opportunity get closer? So one of the ways that I help people think about this is really thinking about the distinctions between multicultural education, social justice education, and culturally responsive education. So what's really important about multicultural education is that really focuses on celebrating diversity. And this is where we can fall into the trap of equity light. We just do the kind of the kumbaya thing, and everybody is included, and we mention a little bit of everybody's culture and background, and then we really are all coming together. That focuses on social harmony. And what's important to lift up is this element is an important aspect of the kind of learning environments we want, but it is not enough to accelerate learning. So students that are furthest away from opportunity need acceleration in their learning. So social justice education, does it offer us that opportunity? Well, we want students to be reflective about kind of what's going on around them. We want them to build that capacity. So part of what we need to be able to do is help students really start to think about that critical consciousness. But here's the thing I want to point out. These first two things, multicultural education and social justice education, don't focus on learning. It is culturally responsive education that really has that focus on accelerating learning so that students have independent agency. And this is more than just choice. This is really that I have the cognitive capacity to take in information and learn at the highest levels.
Are you here in Pennsylvania and still relying on space heaters scattered all?
Okay. So I don't know if I muddied the waters or made them more accessible, but what is the difference that you saw in her distinction between multicultural education, social justice education, and culturally responsive education?
Tony?
What she said about learning, the sort of what's supposed to happen question, as opposed to what does the process look like versus what are the outcomes supposed to look like. And to me, that's an important emphasis that didn't sound like it was all that important in the first two, but was, at least the way she described it, was an important part of the third one. And to me, it's a very important distinction if I'm reading it correctly.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with your assessment. Is there anyone else who'd like to add anything? Part of what she was focusing on was this notion that most of our diversity and discussions tend to focus on instruction and content. So, multicultural, which is more the vein of multicultural education or more the vein of social justice education. We want to think critically about social issues, and it puts a lot of emphasis on the teachers to learn a lot more, and to expand the curriculum. And while those things are important and we need to do some of those things, culture responsive teaching needs to look at another dimension, which is the student capacity for independent learning, and how getting students to take on more of the cognitive load in the classroom and not put all that weight on the teacher to have to do that, brings a little bit more balance to the conversation and allows us to look at how students are learning, how they're attacking the material. So you'll see different approaches like universal design for learning, and things of that nature that are very much akin to culturally sustaining practices and culturally responsive teaching and education. So that distinction, I think, is an important piece, because sometimes we forget that, while the content is important and being able to look at the curriculum, our ultimate goal is to make sure our students are developing their learning capacities and their ability to be independent learners. That's one of the reasons I do lean a lot on the work of Zaretta Hammond, because I think she makes that distinction clear. And she was a teacher for 20 years, so I think that helps in her perspective. But it helps, when you're trying to put all of this on the ground, give it a little bit more direction and guidance in that respect. Okay. So there is another video I wanted to share. I can make sure I have the right ones. And this one, she explains CRT a little bit better and its role. And I think when we're looking at what its role is in the classroom, I think that's where a lot of questions come up. So if I can find the right video. I think I'm missing. Okay, this is not it. Oh, I think this is it. This is not the right one. Okay, hold on. It's coming up now. Yeah, just skip an ad.
TurboTax Do It Yourself by
Here we are.
controversial conversations and culturally responsive practice. Those two are not the same. It can encompass that, but sometimes culturally responsive teaching is about how do I learn this new content by leveraging what I already bring in an asset. Our children aren't coming in as blank slates. So the idea of having a high trust, low stress environment means if I want students to engage in productive struggle, or if I want them to engage in controversial conversations, I have to create an environment. There has to be a community of learners where we have agreements about how we are. That sense of belonging has to be thick. And listen, trust, competence is a trust builder.
Okay. I hope people got the first part of that video. I think it got cut a little bit. But how does the culturally responsive education help create a learning community in the classroom? Were you able to catch her, her statement about that?
The one thing that I picked up is the high trust, low stress environment that would allow those conversations to happen. That's one piece I picked up at the beginning.
Definitely, I think there was a little glitch in the video, but you picked up on, the relationships. The reason they focus on relationships in the beginning and developing a sense of a learning community is so that they can work together to build their capacity as learners, because learning is a social activity, that students learn interacting with each other. They have to be able to, at their best, they're able to talk with each other and the teacher, voice questions, be able to do that. And they need to do that in an environment where they feel seen. And I think that's where people look at the lived experience of students and how we are bringing the cultures together, is acknowledging the differences of the students to create a sense of community. Mm-hmm. Mike.
Yeah, I was just going to say, just chime in and on. I just think it all starts with forming relationships with kids, and that the teacher or the educator knows them and has an understanding of them. And I think culture has to be a part of that conversation or of that knowledge base. So I think if a kid is going to feel connected and safe in the classroom, they have to have a relationship with their instructor.
Definitely. And that outlook is not exclusive to culturally responsive education. It's just the hallmark of culturally responsive education. I think, we look at responsive classrooms or various pedagogies that our teachers are using, because we have a lot of whole student approaches in our classroom, even with the inclusion of MTSS. The whole point is to create that community sense of community, and that's reflected in our school's mission and vision statements. So it's not surprising that is our goal. It's just that culturally responsive pedagogies embrace that as well. So it's not something that's foreign to the teachers or exclusive to that. That is something that I think most educators are aware of and keep in mind, and they're just focusing on the lived experience of students who may not have been involved. Kim.
Yes, I actually wrote it down. I loved when she said productive struggle, because that's exactly what it is. It's like you want to have those respectful conversations. You want to be aware of the differences within the classroom, but you don't want it to go south. And that really grabbed me when she said the productive struggle.
Yes, that is a big part of what I've seen from her when she talks about it in terms of students, and she also talks about it in terms of educators, going through that place of getting to that place of productive struggle, and then having that gradual release so that students can, grow and develop with the material. And I like it because they're sharing the cognitive load, and it's not this notion that teachers have to carry the cognitive load for the students and that this is something they have to do. I think a lot of times when we see these approaches, the first thing that comes to mind is that I have to learn the teacher has to learn all this new material and get all this new packets or whatever we're going to order from the curriculum people to have to, do in the classroom. And it's not at its best, it's not functioning in that way. In that way, it's really trying to find a way for teachers to be able to share the cognitive load across all the student population, develop that sense of a learning community so that they can engage in productive struggle and take on more complex and more difficult cognitive challenges. And I think when we look at it that way, it doesn't seem as much as a foreign object as it could be when we hear these code words in the media.
Yeah.
All right, we have one last video to show on how shift happens. And since I'm deleting as I go, I don't have many to choose from, so it's easier for me to find them. This is the last video.
Throughout the book, we talk about making shift happen. We could use another word there, but here we're talking about the shift, change management for equity. And being able to actually think about how do we get teachers to the point of conscious incompetence? Like, I don't know how to do this yet, but I'm building my capacity to coach my students. And it's double loop learning because now the teachers are trying to get better at coaching their students, not just covering their content, not just lesson design. All of those things are important, but they are not the same as the student getting coached and developing their skills to learn new content and turn it into background knowledge.
Okay. Cool, I can stop sharing. And basically, I know that it was a lot thrown in the video that you couldn't see. I can't keep the ideographic up on the board, but how does this focus on students' cognitive development drive teachers' professional development? Did you hear the distinction she was trying to make? Is basically what I was looking for.
How would you, excuse me.
Yep, Tony, that's good.
Yeah. How did you interpret the bottom part of that curve? If I remember, it was unconscious incompetence. Mm-hmm. Was that the label on the bottom?
Hand side, yep.
Yeah, to conscious incompetence.
Yeah. I'm not sure what to make of that. How to interpret it in terms of what you want, what you're expecting in the other part. Is it as simple as acknowledging what you don't know? Or was there more? Was there more to it than that?
I think it isn't more to it than that. And conscious incompetence is literally becoming aware of what you don't know and being in a position where you're able to learn what you need to know to do that. While they focused on previous focus has been on lesson design and those types of things, the new skill that comes into view with this particular perspective is that teachers were expected to coach students and on their cognition, on their metacognitive stress. How are they thinking about learning and how are they approaching the material? A lot of what this does is a lot of project-based learning, a lot of those things. What teachers are doing in certain classrooms, they're getting students to think about their thinking and coaching them. And so this takes some of the emphasis off of, yeah, we have to lesson plan and we have to do these things which people may be strong at, but a place where they may not be as strong at is being able to coach students through the learning process. I think a lot of what our traditional teaching has sometimes sent the message that teachers have to be perfect, and that they have to, have their lesson plan tight, so tight that if something goes wrong, how do I fix it? Well, I go on the side and I figure it out and I go, okay, let me reteach this to you, because it has to be so smoothly scaffolded for everybody, instead of saying, hey, let the students engage in productive struggle, coach them through that process and let them think about how they learn. It's a different set of skills and an approach to learning that's a little bit different. And I think that she's trying to bring that that distinction to the fore. That's why trying to get focus on students' cognitive development will drive teachers' professional development in a different direction. That won't be focused on as much on, lesson planning and scaffolding, all of these things. In fact, she talks about the dangers of over scaffolding, but really is focused on how to engage students in productive struggle, how to get them to think about their learning and to own their learning so that they can take on more of the cognitive in the classroom. So that's literally a slightly different focus, but something that overlaps with those who are doing universal design for learning, project-based teaching, and those types of things in the classroom. Kim.
Okay, this is going to be a really weird question, but I'm a non-teacher, so I'm genuinely interested. Okay, I'm looking at the infographic. I had to pull it up. Is this something that's expected to be the norm now? Like, is this what's being taught for teachers, or is this something where a teacher has to come to their own aha moment to start going through that process of learning this? I know it's a weird question.
No.
Well, no, because it goes more specifically to teacher prep programs and what pedagogies are being taught at those particular schools.
Mm-hmm.
I think her perspective is that a lot of the more student-centered, whole student perspectives are bringing in this type of approach, whether it's, I keep mentioning universal design for learning because I keep hearing it a lot in different circles, but a lot of the responsive classroom teaching and some of the newer pedagogies that are coming out, even the project-based learning is all about getting students to engage in productive struggle in that space and being able to coach them through that. So those are a different set of skills that are being required in some of these newer pedagogies than some of the more traditional ones that have been that are out there. And I think there's a range of practices when you go into any educational environment that people will be coming from based on their training.
Okay. And do you still find that people are hesitant to move in this direction? And I'm not asking for specific names or anything in the district. I'm just saying in general. Like,
no, I don't think we've had a lot of discussion about the brass tacks. If you ask I think if you ask most teachers, they're like, we haven't heard a whole lot about this stuff yet. You know, we want to know what it actually looks like on the ground, and the state hasn't released anything that is specific. So if you don't know the literature, you're not going to be able to have access to that. So I brought in a person like Azretta Hammond, who is a teacher, who is doing this work, who can sort of make the distinctions between some of these things. And when people listen to that, they're like, oh, we do that over here. There's a lot of project-based learning in our classrooms. There's a lot of universal design for learning. There's a lot of student-centered practices going on. There's a lot of whole student education. So I think there's a lot of pedagogies at play in our district that can easily align with this, and some that may have more difficulty because they have different styles of teaching. They may have more of a lecture discussion format or something that's a little bit different. So I think you'll find the range, but I think the great majority of our teachers are doing some level of this in the classroom.
Okay, thank you.
Nina.
Yeah, and to that point, there's also the fact that many teachers are using what we call the Charlotte Danielson model, which is essentially student-centered. So teachers have had to alter a lot of their teaching from a lot of direct instruction type methods to allowing students to have more of a discovery for their learning. And I feel like culture responsive education is really connected to that in a lot of ways. Obviously, it requires more of an open-minded understanding of different groups who might be in your classroom to make sure that everybody is feeling heard and seen. That's the new piece for me. Charlotte Danielson doesn't really cover that aspect of it. So it's like taking the concept of students going after their own education because think about it, like, you know, we learn best when we teach others and we explain something. That's how our brains learn. We're not just open sieves, right? I wish we could just receive everything and then that's it. But teachers learn better by teaching, right? Like any human. So the concept being that when students can self-navigate and discover and acquire through research, which basically is document analysis, which is where the state ed has been moving towards across the board anyway. Teachers in the classroom are encouraged through all kinds of standards and methods to follow certain domains that would make sure that teachers are actually doing that now, right? But again, the biggest component is the cultural responsive piece that adds to it. So it's student-centered learning in a culture responsive manner. Basically, it's like this corollary that's been added to the end of what we've been doing for the last APPR years.
APPR years. Very true. Thank you.
Thank you for that summation. And one of the reasons I do like Zaretta Hammond is that she makes a clear distinction between the multicultural social justice education and what culture responsive education is. And I think that's helpful because her first book was Culture Responsive Teaching in the Brain. And she really was tying all what we've learned in neuroscience over the years to how to create rigor for students in the classroom and to be accessible to all students. And I think her approach is much more in line with where things are going than some more politicized, you know, if you bring in some consultant from somewhere, they may be saying, what you need to do is have more of this content in your curriculum. And if you don't know this, you're not culturally responsive. Like we can go down a road that I don't know how many people are familiar with the cultural competency movement that was very big. It started in health education, and people wanted to be culturally competent. You know, in healthcare, it was because they had different populations coming in to the hospital, and they wanted to make sure that they respected their beliefs and where they were coming from, and were able to serve them well. But what it ended up being focused on is being knowledge-based, having all of this information. And a person can't possibly learn everything about everyone and then apply it to every individual. So it became a little information overload, and the movement got off track for a while. And I think some of these culturally relevant education is a way to right the ship and to focus in on our students' cognitive development and make sure that our students are learning, not just feeling good about seeing themselves in a picture or something. That's not really the ultimate focus of what we're trying to do. We're trying to get young people to relate to each other, form learning communities, and to take on more complex material and become independent learners. So I hope that the information that we presented tonight sort of helps demystify some of the information that goes on out there, and that may help with some specificity with regard to where some of these ideas are going out there in the field. Are there any comments or questions that anyone has? All right, then I will hand it back over to Dan.
All right. Anyone have anything else for our meeting tonight? I know I have a couple of things. Just one, our next DEI committee meeting is on March 18th. Derek, I believe if we follow the schedule, would that put the subcommittee meetings on March 4th? It's every 2 weeks, right? It's an alternating, so it should be on, right?
I think you're right because we have the steering committees. Yeah, so that should work.
Okay. So our subcommittee meeting will be on March 4th. Our DEI committee meeting will be on March 18th. And thank you all for participating this evening and have a great night.
All right.
Same to you.
All right. Thank you.
Take care.
All right.